Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leahy, thank you for your presentation. And Randy, it's nice to hear your technical interpretation of things. I don't think there's anybody on this dais that isn't concerned about children's safety in schools. In Temecula, we had an issue in our wine country about a decade ago called Pierce's disease, which you know very much a lot about. We didn't know much about it at the time, but we knew that 20% of our vines were being killed off, and it actually put in jeopardy the advancement of our wine country. And it was important. We had Senator Feinstein get involved in the issue with us to find a cure, if you will, because it wasn't just Temecula wine countries. It was at risk. It was going to migrate up to Napa, the area that you spoke about, Mr. Chairman, and it could cause significant devastation in the state of California. So we worked with UCR, and we came out with an antidote called Admire, and Admire is injected, into the vines. And so you talk about these timetables, Monday through Friday, that you can't be applying any pesticide. Is there any distinction between how the pesticide is being delivered? I mean, obviously, if you're injecting it, it's not going to become airborne, and it's not going to cause any problems for kids, which brings up another issue, and I'll mention a few so you can address many of them that I bring up. I'm also a local control advocate. We have a great ag commissioner, Mr. Snyder, in Riverside County, and every geographical agricultural area of the state has unique crops. I mean, almonds, we don't have many almonds in Riverside County. We still have some citrus grows, but if you go in the eastern Coachella Valley, I mean, we probably grow the melons that the world enjoys and table grapes that the world enjoys. And so these proposed regulations are frightening a lot of my growers, obviously. We watch on television, I'm in the pharmacy business, and so we used to have pharmacy detail people who used to come in and sell you to stock the drug, and they used to go tell the doctor about all the wonderful benefits of the drug, but the drug companies have become a little bit more savvy now with communication, and they go right to the consumer right on television. But one of the laws requires that you have to put all the side effects of the drug in addition to what you claim to be the benefits. And that is a double-edged sword for these drug companies, because people see the dangers of taking these drugs, including death, and it scares the death out of people, right? And so you're talking about some very complex chemicals, insecticides that, you're communicating to lay people about these dangerous chemicals that are going to be applied near their schools. A layperson is not going to know what hepatotoxicity is. You and I know what hepatotoxicity is associated with these types of elements. And so I worry about what I would call regulatory hysteria and not letting our local agricultural people have a little bit more control and say-so over the types of communications, the risks versus benefits. So getting to the genesis of why we're here, in the past 5 years, how many cases of acute or chronic toxicity from pesticides have we discovered that have taken a child into a hospital and caused significant morbidity or mortality?
Yeah, very few. We have a pesticide illness surveillance program in which if a pesticide illness is suspected, then the doctor is required to report it to us, and we compile all that data. The most recent set of complete data that we have is for 2014. And so between 2005 and 2014, that 10-year period, there were 4 episodes of drift to schools causing illnesses to children. So it's been very few and infrequent.
Okay, so, and this is a concern of mine, is that sometimes in the state of California, we want to kill a fly with a sledgehammer, and you all are familiar with chromium-6. We have a standard in the state of California that is 10 parts per billion versus 100 parts per billion at the federal level. We've never seen anybody at 50 parts per billion go into the hospitals because of chromium toxicity, yet we've placed these mandates now on water companies throughout the state that is, in my area, it's going to cost one water company $50 million to try to comply with the state standard. So the state, always prides itself, and I think that's good that we pride ourselves in being a state that values safety of our constituents. But you have to draw a line and say, are we going to be stifling that business entity? I mean, we're talking about feeding the world in the state of California. We're talking about 4 incidents in your 2014 study that was monitoring pesticide use a quarter mile from schools. And it doesn't sound like to me that there's alarms going off. I mean, sure, the 4 kids, I hope that they were able to be treated and they're okay. But are we overreacting? And I think we need to be very careful in how we, we attack a $57 billion industry in the state of California and overdo it. One last example I'm going to give you, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I thought you want them to respond.
Yeah, I will, but it's, but I like,
You're on a roll. Okay, go.
I like to share real life experiences if I can, because that's why we're here, right? So I'm a pharmacist. I'm a compounding pharmacist. And the State Board of Pharmacy decided in the 30th of September that many of the drugs that we work with on a day-to-day basis are toxic chemicals, right? So they came out with regulations that were required by January 1st to comply with, that was going to make it a safer environment for our employees, which we embrace. But if you look at the history of these drugs that we work with on a day-to-day basis, and how many of our technicians or pharmacists have been intoxicated because of their exposure and triturating them in a mortar and pestle or putting them into injectables, it's practically zero. Yet I spent over $75,000 to negative pressurize a room, buy expensive hoods, have my staff have to gear up and gown up for a problem that isn't even real. And so this is a microcosm of, Mr. Chairman, what I think is going on in the state is that we tend to overdo it. And when we overdo it, we have unintended consequences. And, we have like a 3-legged stool of our economy in the state of California. We have certainly high tech, we have entertainment, and we have agriculture. Any of those 3 stools that go down, our economy goes down. And it's a big business in my county. So I want to make sure that we are not going to be having unintended consequences of farms just throwing up their hands and saying, we're opening ourselves up to litigation. We're going to be communicating very technical information to schools that have to promulgate those communications to parents. And if I'm a parent, I'll use DDT. We don't use DDT anymore, but if I was learning years ago that they were spraying DDT near one of the schools that my kids goes to, and my kids go to private schools, and I think your comment is very well taken, I would be very concerned. I want to know when they're spraying it, because I'm probably not going to put my kid in school that day.